think it was a couple of weeks ago, Charlene and I were hanging out with Jen and Drake over at Growler Garage when a woman walked in who was very clearly confused and appeared to either be, my guess was like either high or drunk. She possibly was homeless. I wasn't certain. And immediately you can feel that there was a level of discomfort in the room. In fact, when she passed by me, as she walked past me, I had that sense of, just watching her walk past me as she made her way over to a table and sat down to a table that she wasn't invited to. And I know that she wasn't invited to that table because it was my friend Mike sitting over there. So she was just acting quite strange. Now, we tried kind of keeping the conversation going, but it was a significant distraction, enough that the waitress had to come over, and she was very kindly, she offered the lady some water, but actually then told her she needed to make her way out of the restaurant. Now, even though she made her way out of the restaurant and we tried to continue the conversation, I was distracted because I could kind of see that she was making some kind of fuss. I was outside of earshot, so I didn't know exactly what was going on. Anyway, we went back to what we were doing, playing 5 Crowns or something. And, about 15 minutes or maybe 20 minutes later, the cops showed up because what this lady had done is she walked into somebody's house right across the street, walked into their house, made herself a pot of coffee while the lady was upstairs. It was a friend, Kirsten Dishman, some of you know her, walked into Kirsten's house, made herself a pot of coffee, and just started helping herself to some food out the fridge. And Kirsten, she works over at Open Doors, so she was very kind to her and said, "Hey, how can I help you? You need to come out of my house. I don't feel safe." And rightly did that. The lady kind of took off. Well, anyway, it was all just really pretty wild. And it ended fine. Nobody was harmed or anything at that moment. But it gave us something interesting to talk about there and trip out on. But later on that evening, as I look back on the situation, and I thought about what had transpired, I became somewhat concerned and disturbed about something, which was my indifference to the whole situation. I sat back and watched everything that was unfolding with that poor woman without the slightest concern, really, about her well-being, about whether or not she was hungry or thirsty. We were in a restaurant. If I saw that she was homeless or in need, "Hey, can I buy you a sandwich?" No, nothing like that. I was indifferent to her plight. I didn't ask if there was some way that I could pray for her. I did nothing, and that later on that evening, that got under my skin, because I know that if that would have happened 2 or 3 years ago, it would have been a much different story. I wouldn't have just sat back and watched the show. I know that if this would have been a few years ago, I would have got up from that table, walked over to that lady and asked her name, introduced myself to her, and saw whether or not there was some way in which I could help her out. And in fact, Charlene can attest to you that it wasn't that long ago when I was so involved with the homeless community and coordinating our severe weather shelter that I could actually recognize when there was a new homeless person coming into our community. I could go, I've not seen that person before. And I would ask her to please go and stop the car right here wherever you're at so I can go out and introduce myself to them and try to get them some sort of resources. At times it would just drive her nuts because I did it so often. Some of those folks even became friends. As I mentioned last week, one of them was sitting over here. He is years later sober, and he's living in a house, and things are working out for him. But anyway, my point is that there was a time when I was so much more empathetic. And even in this community, I was pretty well known for being a person who was actively trying to figure out how to meet the needs of those in our community who were suffering. There were times when the cops would call me and say, "Hey, Rudy, we got somebody over here. Is there somehow that you can maybe help them, get them posted up in a hotel?" One time, the fire department called me because there was a woman wandering about who couldn't remember her name. And the chief called me and said, "Hey, Rudy, do you happen to, can you come over here and see if you know this woman?" Like, that's how much I was involved. And what happened, though? What led me to now be able to sit there and watch somebody else actually in fear going, don't touch me or whatever, and be indifferent to her? What happened to the sensitivity that I once had? that once had me looking out tenaciously for opportunities for me to help someone in need. And I thought about that a lot. And what it boils down to is that serving our community became something that other people did for me. What I mean is I handed over the responsibility that I once had in coordinating our sheltering efforts. I handed that over to Brian Schimmel, who is our pastor, he's our serve pastor, creating all these wonderful opportunities for us to meet needs in our community. I passed the responsibility to him. I passed the summer food program that I was once coordinating. I said, Zach, can you take care of that, bro? And he did. And then he, after a while, passed that on to Brian Schimmel. Brian Schimmel does a lot of those things around here, as you can tell. The folks who used to come to me saying, Rudy, can you please, they used to the homeless community used to hand out my phone number to all their friends and say, hey, Rudy can get you a hotel, Rudy can do this. I couldn't keep up with it, so we finally created a process by which now they go to Maryland, and Maryland meets all of those needs. And there's a process and a structure for that. Now look, in some ways, all of that was good and necessary to take it out of my hands because too many things were falling through the cracks. People with significant needs were falling through the cracks, and it was, there was a point when my role here as a pastor required so much of me that I really, to be quite honest, didn't have the time or the bandwidth to do those things effectively. But see, what I'm getting at is in passing those responsibilities on to Brian Schimmel or Zach or Marilyn or Annika or the many wonderful people who are doing those things, it's kind of in a way made it easier for me in moments like that in Growler Garage to kind of say like, well, someone else will take care of it. In fact, there's Kristen Dishman right there getting in the cop car to go deal with the issue. Cool. I don't have to really worry about that. Or even worse, to be able to say, it's kind of not my problem. Someone else, there's resources out there, I'm sure they'll find them. And here's the thing, what I want to communicate to you this morning. As Christians, it's always our problem. It's always our business to take care of the needs of those who are suffering. In fact, to passively sit back and watch as other people suffer without lifting a finger is actually a sin. It's the sin of indifference. And the book of James, chapter 4, verse 17, he says this, whoever knows the right thing to do and fails to do it, for him, it is a sin. Like whoever knows the right thing to do, but then you fail to do that thing, for him and for her, it is a sin. That's a huge statement right there. Throughout his life, Jesus actively met the needs of those who were poor and who were hungry and who were destitute and who were labeled as outcasts. And we are called to do the same thing. We are called to serve in the exact same way that Jesus did, which was selflessly. I want to read one of the last teachings that Jesus shared with his disciples before he was crucified. It's often referred to as the sheep and the goats, but it's in Matthew chapter 25, verses 31. Let me read this to you. It's going to be up here on the screen for you. And Jesus said this, when the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, he will sit upon his glorious throne. All the nations will be gathered in his presence, and he will separate the people as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. He will place the sheep at his right hand and the goats at his left. And the king will say to those on his right, come, you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you fed me. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me into your home. I was naked, and you gave me clothing. I was sick, and you cared for me. I was in prison, and you visited me. Then these righteous ones will reply, Lord, when did we ever see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When were you a stranger and we showed you hospitality, or naked and gave you clothing? When did we ever see you sick or in prison and visit you? And the king will say, I tell you the truth. I tell you the truth. When you did it to one of the least of these, my brothers and sisters, you were doing it to me. And when I was studying this passage, it was interesting because I discovered that a lot of Bible teachers quibble and argue about who are these brothers and sisters that Jesus is referring to here in this little parable here. You know, they get about it. Well, is Jesus? Because some argue that these brothers and sisters are simply speaking about like some 144,000 people, Jewish believers who will be like persecuted during the tribulation. And some other folks say, no, well, when it says like only serve brethren, it's talking about your brothers, those of us who are in the faith. In other words, like take care of your own, which like seems crazy. Who are our brothers and sisters is what they're getting at here. Well, Jesus was asked a very similar question. Could people say, so am I supposed to love? I'm supposed to love my neighbor like myself? Well, who's my neighbor? Well, that was the question, and Jesus answered it by telling the story of the Good Samaritan. I'm going to spare you the story because I'm sure that most of you already know it. But if you don't, it's in Luke 10. You can look it up later. But essentially, in that story, Jesus teaches us that absolutely anybody who is in need, who is suffering, who is experiencing injustice or poverty, all of those are our brothers and sisters. And as our brother and sister, we are called to take care of them. And it's so important to the Lord that we take care of them that Jesus says in verse 40, I tell you the truth, when you serve the least of these, your brothers and sisters, you're doing it to me. Jesus identifies with the poor. He identifies with the hungry and those who are sick and those who are in prison, the elderly who are left alone, the widow, the orphan, or as he says in here, the stranger. He identifies with them so much that if you help and serve them, Jesus says that you are actually helping and serving him. And the question we ask ourselves, which is I was asking myself that after that evening at Growler Garage, is to what degree are we really doing that? When someone is hungry or thirsty, we're supposed to feed them and give them something to drink, he says. When they're homeless, when they're in need of clothing, we're supposed to take care of them, to look at them with compassion and care and a deep, heartfelt concern. Well, how many of us really look at homeless folks as an eyesore to get rid of? We all drive over there past Winco and that encampment that's off there to the left. All of us have. And of course, we also all see how messy it is, how much garbage is out there. The question is our first instinct disgust? Like, ugh, gross. Why isn't somebody getting rid of them? Somebody posted a video of a drone flying over there. Somebody was curious. Let's see what that really looks like. And it's on social media, and you can see what it looks like. And the things that people say in that thread are just horrible. Talking about these are humans, children of God. And people look at them with disgust and disdain. And can you imagine, how do we think Jesus would respond as he walked by that encampment? Would it be disgust? And we absolutely know that everything in him would be in there. And so would his disciples be, multiplying bread and fishes in that place and healing them and delivering them from demon possession, I believe, really in some cases. What is the heart of Jesus toward them? Again, it's just probing our hearts. What is our response? Because I think we have to do a heart check. Why do I feel disgusted by them? Why don't I feel a compassion and a love for them as Christ would? Why is my first response, be rid of them, instead of trying to figure out how can we go in and show them the love of Jesus? That's really true. When he's talking about here, taking care of the stranger. Taking care of the stranger, what does that mean in our context here in 2021? I think of God's very challenging words to his people, Israel. I think the verse is up there. Listen to what he says this is a challenge to his people, Israel, who thought that they were it. They were, in fact, the it thing. I mean, they were God's chosen. Everybody else outside of that was a scrub, a Gentile. So they thought they were it. And so it had this tendency to disregard everybody. But look, the strangers who reside with you shall be to you as your citizens. The strangers who reside with you shall be to you as your citizens. You shall love each one as yourself. For you were strangers in the land of Egypt. Now, I just think of those thousands of folks from Mexico trying to make their way up here to America. Now, look, I know it's all sorts of complicated. I'm not even trying to go there with it, but I'm just saying our heart issue. I know it's complicated, but is our first thought, stay in Mexico? Stay over there, or even the folks who are already here. How do we treat those undocumented immigrants among us? Do we look down our noses at them? God's heart hasn't changed toward the stranger. So what is our heart when we come across folks like that all around us? The strangers who reside with you shall be to you as your citizens. What he's reminding them of is, because remember, you were once strangers. He was reminding them, look, you were strangers in the land of Egypt. You were once outsiders, don't you? And look at the love and the grace that's been extended to you. And he's telling that actually to us. This is a wonderful reminder because he told that to Israel, saying, what right do you have to look down your nose at those folks who are strangers, who are aliens? Ephesians chapter 2, verse 12 through 14. Remember, and he's saying this to us. This is New Testament speaking to Gentiles. Remember that one time you were living apart from Christ. You were strangers, he says. This is Ephesians chapter 2, verse 12. You were strangers. You were strangers and excluded from citizenship among the people of Israel. And you didn't know the covenant promises that God had with them. You lived in this world without God and without hope. But now in Christ, you who were once far off have been brought near by the blood of Christ. And he himself is our peace, who has made us both one, has now broken down the walls of hostility. He's speaking to us. We don't have the right to really, we feel like we do because we're citizens. My goodness. Man, I'm just lucky that I was born here. This is awesome. I love the United States. But sometimes we can tend to look down our noses. Again, we discussed it though. So if someone is sick or in prison, we're supposed to be demonstrating care and concern for them. Again, because as we do, it's as though we're loving Jesus. And just a quick point here about the extent of my indifference. Look, you guys have heard about my brother Rick, in and out of prison. Where is he at right now? Last update, he was out. Well, now he's back in. And I got to just be honest with you. I've just grown tired of it. I haven't written him any letters. I've not put any money on his books. He's called a few times, and I've accidentally missed them. Not really, because he didn't want nothing to do with me when he was free, I feel. He didn't call me once when he was out those 8 months, and he gets locked up, and then the first thing, hey, bro, can you put money on my books? I'm like, not this time. I've grown indifferent. And look, I understand that we need to be mindful of boundaries and we have to be careful about enabling dumb and destructive behavior. Totally get that. But I think that I'm allowing myself to use all of that as an excuse for me to continue to be indifferent about my brother's plight. I say, I'm not putting money on his books this time. That's my brother. Like, Rudy, what is your problem here? So I'm speaking to myself, the indifference to a homeless person, and it goes, and then my brother, two of which are mentioned in this thing. Those who are hungry, those who are in prison. And to be honest, I'm like, not doing a great job at that, Rude. And it's sobering because my indifference, because I remember the words that Jesus speaks on the second part of that, Matthew chapter 5, sheep and goats parable, saying he's going to speak to the goats who ignore the needs of those around him. And he says this, they're going to reply, Lord, when did we ever see you hungry or thirsty, or a stranger, or naked or sick, or in prison, and not help you? Then he'll answer, I tell you the truth, when you refuse to help the least of these, your brother Rick, Sisters, you're refusing to help me. That's real. I got to read it like that. Personalize it. Going, yeah, dude, he's talking to me here. Demonstrating the love and kindness to those in need, whether we think they deserve it or not, is one of the defining qualities of God's sheep. And when some people stand before God to give an account for how they live their lives on this planet, their lack of concern for the pressing needs of those around them are going to reveal that they were never really sheep at all. And we're going to be held accountable for how we demonstrated our faith in Christ through action, acts of love and compassion and kindness to those in need. And here's the thing, look, I'm not telling you anything you don't even know. This is Christianity 101. This is elementary. We're called to serve. We know that. We're called to serve as Jesus did. He said, go and do likewise. And serving others and following Jesus go hand in hand. We know that. It's basic. So why don't we do it is the question we have to ask ourselves. It's 10:05. I'm going to just go. I'm just got a little bit here left. Okay? Just talk about why don't we do that? I mean, there's a bunch of reasons. I just thought, like, why don't we? Why don't I? Really is the question. I think sometimes folks just simply think that they're not qualified. I can't do that. I'm not really equipped to deal with maybe the psychological challenges or problems with addiction that some folks are contending with. I can't do that. Look, every need, and I'm talking every need in the church and in the community. Every need in the church or in this community, it's not your calling. Not every need is your specific calling, but you make no mistake about this. You are called by God to do something. Because Peter says, we have all been given spiritual gifts and talents, but based on the gift that you have received, everyone should use it to serve others, he says, 1 Peter 4:10. Based on the gift you received, everyone should use it to serve others as good managers of the varied grace of God. You all have gifts and talents here. All of you have gifts and talents in some way, and they are all to be utilized for the benefit of God's kingdom and for serving the needs of others. And I think sometimes folks just simply think that it's the role of the pastor to do it. Maybe like me, you've just said, well, Rudy and Brian and Annika, they all got it taken care of. They don't need my help. And so, like me, you've passed the responsibility to someone else, so it makes it easy for you to forget about it. Somebody else got that taken care of. I'm telling you, no, that's not the case at all. We do need you. And you are qualified. God He's calling you to serve, and He's going to give you the energy and the resources and the abilities to do whatever it is that He's calling you to in that moment. He proves it over and over again. You'll have wisdom beyond what you thought, patience and compassion beyond what you thought, because God will equip you for that. So don't say that you can't. You can. You just got to take the opportunity, step into it, and then watch how God's Spirit works in and through you. That's really, really true. All right, so that's one. Maybe you don't feel equipped. You are. You can. Sometimes folks say, well, we're too busy. Forget it. That is the most lame excuse. Even me, I'm a pretty busy guy. It's my own fault. I'm busy. But I'm telling you, and Charlene can testify, I seem to have 2 hours to play Oculus, this virtual reality game. 2 hours. Now look, we got to make room to have fun and stuff, but it wasn't just like 2 hours that day, and it was 2 hours the day before, and then 2 hours the day before. It's ridiculous. We all have time. You have time to binge watch The Walking Dead or whatever show you're watching. We have time. You all know that is the most tired excuse that it's not even worth mentioning. Because we go, well, I'm too busy. We make time for whatever we think is most important, and some of us just happen to think that watching reruns of Survivor seems to be more important, or whatever the thing may be. That was ours this week, binge watching that stuff. I know some of you, that's making you feel bad. Good, because I'm glad, because it's really silly. We're too busy. Give me a break. Anyway. How many of you already watched we watched all 3 seasons of Cobra Kai, like in the span of like maybe 3 days, a season a day? I don't know. But anyway, you got time, so stop it. So, and then how about, here's another one. We don't know what's going on. Now, I think this is a valid thing. I'm surprised because we just mentioned something last night. We had some friends over, and our friend Holly actually works with, what's the thing that she does, baby? Because she was talking about, she kind of, like social services. She works in social services. But I was telling her about this program called Second Home. What's Second Home? Charlene and I think it's been maybe a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years, we took in a young lady, a homeless youth, into our home. We have an extra room, and so we had her stay with us for a long time. She was just struggling, and she wanted to finish high school, and so we took her in. Well, we recently learned that there's an organization called Second Home where people can open up their homes to homeless youth and provide a place for them to finish out high school. These are kids who are on track to graduate. They want to do well, but they're struggling with homelessness, and they just need a spare room. And this organization helps be a bridge to have accountability, and there's some training and all of that stuff involved. How many have an extra room? I mean, that's something that people can do, and Holly's like, I didn't even heard of that. Yeah, so some of you might simply just not be aware of all the many ways that you can serve. Think of that, helping a young homeless student be able to finish high school and move on to be successful in life, and you can have a hand in that. That's amazing. Yeah, but that extra room is for my blah, blah, blah. Like for me, the extra room that this young lady took, it was my magic room. It has all my magic books and stuff. Well, that's my magic room, and then how am I going to practice in there? Oh, please, Rudy. I don't hardly even go in there anyway, really. So, well, that's my knitting room, or that's my she shed, or whatever it is. Excuses. So let me just tell you a couple more things that we have, and you're like, wow. Let me tell you a couple of things we have going on, okay, that we have our hands in here at Old Town. First of all, you are aware, I hope, that we have a clothing closet that's even more than a clothing closet here in our own church, Closet Green. Annika runs this ministry where they're providing folks with all sorts of household items. If you need a toaster, we got a toaster. You need shoes, we got shoes. Kids' clothes, blankets, pillows. But it takes volunteers to sort through the stuff. The whole upstairs, man, there's all sorts of stuff in there that needs to be sorted and then given out. You can be a part of making a tangible difference in the life of someone. That's awesome. I was talking about Kirsten earlier. She was a young lady who was there at Growler dealing with that other woman. But she's over at Open Door, and she was talking about they have a little shelter. It's a warming shelter, I guess you can call it, where it's a tent, and they have heaters in there and tents in there. And between 9 and 3, you can volunteer to go and be a host there. I mean, you could just pick an hour or two to spare to sit there, and not just to serve a meal, but be present, build relationship with these folks. She said, come over and play cards with them or a board game. Maybe you can play music. They ask people to do Bible studies, actually. Can you lead a Bible study? Maybe you can. But from 9 to 3, they have this warming tent out there in Cornelius, right there across the street from that encampment. Do you have an hour to spare? Of course you do. I would encourage you to, and I'll have links and all this stuff. I'll email it to you, or maybe I'll just go to Old Town FG, go to the serve, and you'll see a lot of these things already on there. But that's an easy way for you to get involved. Right now, Brian Schimmel is looking for somebody to replace Claude. Claude is a member of our church family here. He was a bus driver, and then COVID hit for the school. He was a school bus driver. COVID hit, so he said, well, I got all this time. I could sit and watch reruns of Survivor or episodes of Cobra Kai, but you know what I'm going to do? I'm actually going to go and utilize my time to benefit others. And so he, and actually Pastor Zach joined him in this, would drive this refrigerated truck over to, what's the Hispanic church in Cornelius, Zach? St. Alexander's, and deliver food. It's the Oregon Food Bank. And well, school's about to be back in session, so Claude can no longer drive the truck, and they need someone to do it. And it's for a couple hours in the morning to go take the truck over there, and then if we had another person, you can go and now bring the truck back. So you have to see that. Is a video playing? Because you should look at all these boxes full of food that people are receiving. The line is ridiculous how long the line is of people receiving food. I was astonished because I was the one who took that film. I couldn't believe it. Tangible difference in the lives of people. And it only takes an hour or two out of your day to do that. Look, I can go on and on. Food bank, our clothing closet, being a friend to the homeless community over there in Cornelius and here. Get to know someone. Reach out to someone. When you see a homeless person, say, hey, what's your name? Is there some way I can help you? And then say, hey, I go to this church, Old Town. We have resources available for you. Last one. Some people say, well, but I have kids. I can't really do that. Hey, I get that. But, what better way to model Christ-likeness than to bring your kids into a situation where they can now actively serve? You know how young people, every kid's an activist these days. My 16-year-old daughter, I love her, and she feels like she has the answer to all the world's problems. Man, well, let's give her some opportunities to try and see if she can make a change. I mean, kids have passion and youth on their side, But we see it all the time. Kids serving right alongside their parents. Okay, let me close this out. Many of you, I know you, many of you have volunteered your time and your talents and your energy, your resources to help us accomplish the mission that we have here at Old Town Church, which is to actually make a difference in our community. I know that you've not just put food on the table for folks or clothed them. Some of you have even befriended homeless folks like I had done. And I know that when you get to the other side of this life, you're going to learn that some of the people who you served were angels, or maybe even Jesus himself. I really believe that. But there's a lot of us who are sitting on our hands and not actively doing the work of the ministry that God has called us to. We're not actively serving the needs of others. And we've grown somewhat callous, indifferent to the needs of others. I'm telling you, because the Lord does, that is a sin. Whoever knows the thing that they should do but doesn't do it, that is a sin to him and her. What are we going to do about it? You can hear this and go, yeah, but but I'm not going to do that. And you can. You have that choice, of course. It's a liberty that you have to say, I'm not going to do that. But based on what the Lord says, that would be doing not just yourself, but doing Jesus a huge disservice, and of course the needs of those people that you're ignoring. I hope that you would take this message seriously, because God does. Take it to heart. Where can you serve? An hour or two here or there will make all the difference. And the more people that do that, the greater amount of folks we have serving, the less it'll fall upon the few that always seem to be the ones that sign up. It happens all the time. We have a serve project. Guarantee I can name the people who will sign up. It's because it's the same all the time. It shouldn't be that way. I love how the Message version of the Bible translates 1 John 4:20, verse 21. It's pretty much closing with this. If we won't love the person that we can see, how can we love the God that we can't see? The command we have from Christ is blunt. Loving God includes loving people. You've got to love both. And we're most like Jesus when we're serving the needs of others, not just within these walls, although that's important, and I would challenge you to find a place to serve here, of course. But not just on Sunday morning, every day out there as we demonstrate our love for Jesus through intentional acts of love, kindness, and compassion. And it's my prayer for all of you who attend, call Old Town Church your home, that I pray that you will be counted among those sheep who hear these words from King Jesus, our great shepherd. Come, you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the creation of the world. And that's all I have to say about that. I'm going to invite the worship team to come on up, and we're going to take our offering at this point, which is how we accomplish a lot of the things that we do here in our community. And so if you want to actively participate in the work that Old Town is doing, meeting the needs of others, paying, in some cases, utility bills and things of that nature, putting people in a hotel or helping them make their rent, all those things. I mean, we help do that. You help do that. And so if you want to be a part of that and join us and partner with us in that, this is your opportunity to do that. You can give online, oldtownfg.com, and there's a little give tab up at the right. You can download that wonderful app that Pastor Zach put together for us. Just go to your app store if you have an iPhone, and you can go through that, or you can mail a check to us to 2224 15th Avenue. Oh my goodness. All right, we'll take our offering at the same. But thank you for patiently listening to that message. Again, I really do hope that you take it to heart, because I know that in my life I have some work to do in this area. So I'm pointing the finger at me in this, all right? Let me pray for you and pray for me, and we'll continue to worship. Father, I said a lot of words, and my hope is that they will be received and not taken lightly, because really these aren't my words. I'm sharing words that you spoke to us, telling us that when we serve the needs of others and those who are hurting and down and out, we're serving you. And I see that, I don't know, I've lost that sensitivity, Father. I want that back, and I'm just committing to you that I'm gonna do better. And I pray that we all will, and we'll be more intentional when we see someone in need, doing everything in our power to make sure that they are well fed and taken care of. And in doing so, blessing your heart. We pray in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen.